Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, one and all. This is the Smoking Barrel. I'm Rustin Edwards, based in Geneva, where it's cold and cloudy, and my illustrious co-host, world traveler extraordinaire, Mr. Matt Stanley in Dubai.
I don't have a proper Christmas hat. I can't
I say,
find
is
it.
that a bit of origami? What is that?
But my daughter made me this for my microphone.
Well, isn't that
That's
isn't that ho ho lovely?
can you still yeah, no, it's been ages on that, bless her. Very good. Anyway, Merry Christmas. Well, is it? I don't know. When's it too early to say Merry Christmas? It's never too
Never
early
too
to
early
say
to
anything.
say Merry Christmas. Well, rule of thumb, if you're before Thanksgiving, you should have no Christmas decorations up. After Thanksgiving, Christmas decorations are okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's funny, because obviously Middle East. Um, I mean, to say they celebrate Christmas here now is a total understatement. It's unbelievable how busy everything is. And I've got a pantomime I'm going to on Saturday.
Pantomime.
Love a
Wow.
panto. I love a panto. And then I've got a Christmas brunch. And then my parents are here. And I play golf with mates on Monday. We had our festive lunch afterwards. I took my mother out yesterday. I'm such a good son. And then we've got Christmas next week. And I've still not started my shopping. And I hope I'm not alone there. What happens is these days, it's like my wife hasn't sent me the Amazon list that I need to get for the kids yet because I know that things are delivered here. So I don't. The panic isn't quite as as dramatic as it used to be. I remember when I used to work at traffic down. I was on Oxford Street. We used to finish early on Christmas Eve. That's when I'd do my shopping on the way to the train station and
Ah.
come back with bags of Selfridges. I spent 300 quid in a freaking DVD player that no one ever used. But yeah, anyway,
See,
festive celebrations.
that's where the strategy that I have is that because we celebrate Orthodox Christmas, I get an extra week.
Oh, here you go. Yeah, someone was asking me the other day because it's celebrated quite heavy. When is Orthodox Christmas for the
Uh,
uninitiated?
Traditionally around January 6th,
Okay, okay. Well, there you go.
which aligns with Epiphany in the
Okay.
Catholic calendar. The arrival of the three wise men delivering gifts to the Christ child.
Yes, sir. There you go. Okay. Yeah, look, I mean, lots going on. Is there lots going
Oh
on?
well,
It's kind of,
the Bulls had a early Christmas gift from the Donald. Embargo on Venezuelan shipping.
yeah,
That's always great, but we're still below $60 on Brent.
we are. Let me share my
Um,
screen so you can see where flat price is. Yeah, look, I put in my commentary this morning that, where is it? So the lowest, where did we get to yesterday? We got down to
we got down to the
58.72.
58s.
Yeah, 58.72. You'd have to go back to February 2021, which we can do here. Uh, no, January 2021. Yeah, around here. And I think you and I released a podcast around the same time. Um, that was, I put it, another thing I put in the old Christmas oily commentary this morning was in February 2021, the only questions on everyone's lips was, have you had the Sinopharm or the Pfizer jab? Seems like a distant memory. But look, what I was amazed by is actually when you go back, look, where is it? Where is old negative Nelly? Um,
That was in March or April of 2020.
Yeah, look at this. Do you remember? I remember sitting on my sofa, like I fell off my chair. This is Brent. It was WTI went down to the
Minus
30s.
$32, if I remember correctly.
2020, the low, 21 bucks 65, March
Uh,
2020.
I think it got, yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
And then if you fast forward to March 2022, which we can do now, one sec, bear with me. I know it's a little bit slow. 105, 18th. And it went up to a high of I think 130 bucks at some stage. Yeah, look,
Yeah, we got up to fairly lofty in the, at least in the upper, almost 140 again.
7th of March, 2 years later, it's 20. I mean, what's that? Seven times higher. I mean, look, I know we're comparing what COVID was like, but to put it into context, oil markets haven't been this low since the middle of the biggest pandemic I think my generation will certainly live through, hopefully. But it's been a slow grind down, isn't it? It's been, I was listening to a mate of mine, Ed Bell, on the radio this morning. He's the chief economist, acting chief economist, Emirates NBD, the biggest bank here in the region, or one of them. And he said this is the fourth year in a row where oil will end lower. And I don't know about you, but I mean, gas oil cracks are still doing very well, lower than they were, obviously. We'll talk about that trade in a minute, but you can see refining margins still on a 321 or above $20 a barrel, which isn't bad. Um, but I don't know, like fourth year in a row, oil prices are down. We haven't heard much from OPEC. Are we in a low price environment that people are happy with? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I've always said that, the fair price of crude is probably somewhere between 60 and $65. And I still think that's probably a fair price for crude. I think we're going to see a push lower. I think it's going to happen. You're going to have low liquidity in the last 2 weeks of the year,
Yeah.
and that's going to grind markets lower. Yeah, geopolitical is still providing the supportive mechanism in the marketplace, which it has been since the invasion of Ukraine. And that's going to continue being there because I don't think much talked, vaunted peace proposals and what have you. I don't think anything has come to fruition that actually works. And I think the belligerent nations involved are going to continue fighting each other. I don't see them coming to a peace plan anytime soon. Um,
Well,
so,
I think that it looks like the market has firmly priced in that things are done. I mean, I think
well,
Zelensky came out
I don't know if
yesterday.
I don't know if I'd call it pricing in a peace dividend. I think the market's been pricing in oversupply.
Okay.
Because it's not, and maybe in the news feeds people are using potential peace as an excuse, but every analyst, every bank, IEA, EIA, only OPEC's the only only analyst group not showing any type of stock build for next year. But if you've got, and you have, I think the big push we've had down here recently has been a result of the Trafigura comments that were made about 2 weeks ago,
Mm.
where the CEO was saying that we see an oversupplied market. We think it's going into a super oversupplied market. And then, it seems like that just took the last of the air out of the balloon, and we've come down below 60.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, it's this has largely been what everyone has been waiting for all year, and we've spoken about it so many times in the past. Let me show you this. Yeah, look, there's an oversupply, but the front of the curve hasn't priced it in yet, and it was kind of like an inevitability that was eventually going to happen. But then the sort of narrative kind of shifted for yes, there's going to be an oversupply, but is it oil people can buy? Right? And that's kind of where we seem to be. So my colleague Homian wrote this column on this morning, update this morning, published late last night. So we've got some front end splits have flipped into contango. I mean, April, May is the first one trading -8 right now with Feb, March +27, March, April +11, and April, May is flat. But yeah, that has certainly, come off that market. But look, I mean, from a physical point of view, we look at Iranian and Russian oil, and these are FOB prices. -50. Oh, sorry, these are ex-ship prices. It doesn't say FOB there, Stan. It says DES, you knob. Merey, so crude, the heavy crude, -15 to Brent. Iranian light, -8. And Urals -7 versus Oman into India and Brent into China. So have they moved? I mean, we hear in Venezuelan crudes have moved from about -17 FOB to perhaps -20, and then obviously freight on top. What's happening with that? But look, another one that I just want to raise against this is what my freight guys have written around the dark fleet. Because obviously we're talking about this Venezuelan issue, the skipper, which was last week when news broke that the US went on board and seized it, and we heard last night from the Donald. I know you want to talk about that in a minute, but look at this, the dark fleet, the counter vessels, where we are now. So we've got Iran, we've got Venezuelan dark fleet here, we've got Iranian down here, and then we've got a mix of the two. And that's significant. That's tripled since 5 years ago when we were talking about COVID. But it does seem to have given flat price a bit of a boost today. This news from the Donald about the armada of ships. He went off on one of his Trump to Trump truth tangents, triple T's.
Well, I think
Um,
the Armada that he was talking about was more the U.S. Navy presence that's in the
yeah,
region that can stop the flow of oil. I think the last bit of data I saw on the amount of ships sitting in Venezuelan waters was roughly 25 to 30 ships were in the Maracaibo Bay or around the Port of Jose.
yeah. Let me share. I can show you that because obviously we acquired this company called Marine Traffic a few years ago. Um, let me show you
But
this.
but when you talk about oil on the water, though, and the oil overhang that happens, it's what's tradable, what's not. Well, that's also depends on what country you're in, because yes, commercially tradable that major oil refineries won't buy. Outside of Chevron, Venezuela is not untouchable. Same thing with Iranian or Russian flows from Rosneft and Lukoil, because other Russian producers are still under the price cap which has been adjusted under the G7 new price cap regime, which is dynamic versus fixed.
Right.
That being said, just because the ship is or the cargo is Russian origin or Iranian origin or Venezuelan origin, I don't think that stops China, Indian refineries from buying it. They'll buy it and they'll put it where they want to put it.
Okay.
And so it doesn't create yes, it has bogged down the logistics flows because it's taking longer to discharge the ships, but they'll find a way to discharge. Like I always say, oil will find a way.
Yeah.
Um, and this latest attempt to squeeze the Venezuelan government, the Maduro regime, by blockading the country. I mean, we'll see if that's going to be effective or not.
Well, just explain this to us, okay? That's the skipper. This was the BLCC that was boarded by the US forces last week. We've got her just off Georgetown right now. Here she is pinging. She was last seen. Uh, when did we last see her roaming? Yesterday morning at 10 to 2. So she's not actively pinging off her AIS. But here's marine traffic around Venezuela. The different arrows obviously refer to different types of vessel. There is a way that you can filter all
Yeah, you can
this.
filter out and just show only tankers.
I can ship type. Let's go. Just tankers. Um, so I don't use this much. Sorry. Um, so look, I mean, the vast majority of Venezuelan exports are from where, Russ? You know.
So Maracaibo Bay, which is
Okay.
the big bay that's under the Gulf of Venezuela.
Right. So that's down here.
Yep, Maracaibo, and also up around where you see all those red dots there at I think that's Port Jose.
So look, I mean, if you are of geeky mindedness and you wanted to sort of run a sort of back test, or what marine traffic looks like, imagine if you can. I mean, we last time we kind of did one of these was the Iran-Israel war when we saw through the Straits of Hormuz a kind of barricade of U.S. Navy ships down here or whoever it may have been. I mean, what's the reality here? Are we talking about U.S. Navy, U.S. Navy, U.S. Navy, U.S. like
Well,
stopping any vessel that's loaded from any of these ports
if
heading north or wherever?
if you look at the main load ports and you zoom into where Aruba and Curacao are,
Yeah.
so Aruba and Curacao, those are not Venezuelan; those are Dutch protectorates, the Netherlands.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, and so it gives you a point where you can see exactly how a blockade could work. I mean, because again, you're talking U.S. naval assets. How many ships do you need to effectively have a blockade? Well, if you see a ship coming in and you can deter that vessel from arriving or departing, then you're
Yeah.
effective in your blockade. And that can be done through air assets, can be done through vessels.
I mean, okay, okay, okay.
And if the U.S. government is going to take this road of seizing ships that have already been sanctioned, because there is legal precedent to that, then it
Yeah, but
becomes a
hang on.
case of how many ships can they seize and how many of those ships can they return to U.S. waters for auction and
Okay.
disposal.
Right. Okay. But listen, this is the message that Trump wrote last night. Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembly in the history of South America. It will only get bigger, and the shock to them will be like nothing they've ever seen before. Until such time as they return to the United States of America all of the oil, land, and other assets that they previously stole from us. Now,
Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch.
look, I'm not going to opine on that because I don't want to get nicked. I like Christmas. But he says, today I'm ordering a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela. Is he allowed to do that?
Anybody can do what they want. I mean, it's a
Wow.
bit of a, you know, every country can do what they want. Now, can they execute it without any issue? That's a different story. I mean, we already have a member of the Security Council, UN Security Council, invading a sovereign nation in Europe, Russia, Ukraine. The United States, also a member of the UN Security Council, decides they're going to put an embargo against, they declared the Maduro government a terrorist organization, which is a bit tenuous, I think, in the definition of what a terrorist organization is. Um, so they've decided to impose a blockade to squeeze Maduro to force him to leave. Now, in the background of what's gone on here, there was this deal that was done with Belarus on potash, where Belarus released some political prisoners and they were allowed to have sanctions on their potash exports released by the US government. Now,
Okay.
uh, Loroshenko then today said that he would be happy to receive Maduro and his entourage in exile.
This is Lukashenko, the Belarusian president, you were saying, yeah?
Yes. So is there going to be something where, okay, Trump's going to put pressure on Maduro? Maduro is going to say, okay, fine, I'm done, I'm out. He takes him and his family, they board an IL-76 and they fly to Minsk, and now they're living in Belarus with their millions of dollars that they've absconded from the country.
Okay. Okay.
Which
All right. Let's look. Okay. Let's. What
which
does
I don't
this
want to
actually?
opine on that, but I think that's kind of where this situation is going to resolve. I don't see
Right.
the U.S. Will the U.S. seize another tanker? They might. Because again, the sanctioned tankers are operating outside of the law. They're operating most likely without proper insurance or other proper documentation or even false flags, which does make them seizable. And that's been recognized before in the past.
Okay. So there is. This has legs then, essentially.
Legally, potentially it can have legs legally as long as the Department of Justice in the United States has gone and received warrants for the arrest of identified vessels in certain areas, and they've laid it out in that way.
Okay. All right. Look. What does it practically mean for oil markets? Without me wanting to get into any more legal issues with.
In my opinion, absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
If they say, well, it's going to deter the flows of Venezuela, Venezuelan crude at 700,000 barrels of sanctioned oil, because if you consider Chevron is taking their cargoes into the United States, and remember, the embargo is against sanctioned tankers, not unsanctioned tankers, which Chevron would be shipping on unsanctioned tankers.
Okay. Because when you, yeah, look. I mean, what have we got here? So if we go November, let me do this in KBD. So we've got 800, no, 723,000 barrels a day
Of which
of,
143 went to the US.
yeah, which is the Chevy run, right?
Yes.
Okay. And okay, because my colleague Muyu, she agrees with you. She says the Venezuelan oil blockade is not enough to lift crude prices or improve global balances. Venezuela production accounts for around 1% of global output. But when you're looking at price reaction this morning, you're talking about I think we're up to 59.90 this morning. So that was around, that's around a 1.5, 2% gain.
Yep.
Is this just the sort of geopolitical trade shifting again? It seems like when there's
Well,
no news, all markets sell off. But when there
Well,
is news, it
there
bounces back.
was all right. So we just had a big sell-off on Monday,
Yeah.
and now here we are. Tuesday continued the sell-off, and Tuesday night you had the announcement of an embargo on Venezuela. So of course you're at a low point in the market, lowest points we've seen since 2021.
Yeah.
And that obviously put people, oh, let's buy that. It's cheap, cheap, cheap. And so what was bought, structure was bought, flat price was bought.
Right.
And that I think is just the knee-jerk reaction because, ooh, you're stopping oil flow out of a sovereign country. Now, practically, what can happen there is that, okay, does Venezuela have a navy that can challenge the US Navy? No. So probability of a shooting incident between two sovereign nations, very low, I would say.
Right.
Can the US execute on take as soon as a ship hits international waters that's been sanctioned, the US could seize that ship? Yes. Does that oil go away? No, it doesn't. It goes up to the United States. It gets sold into an auction program, which the US has done with numerous
Yeah.
seized cargoes, and the oil remains on the market. So it's not like the oil has gone away. But you are curtailing oil flow out of Venezuela, which again is probably going to be the impact of about 400 to 500,000 barrels a day of supply to the market.
Yeah.
Now, is that going to be over the calendar year? It could be over a week, could be over a couple of days, because the bottom line is that Venezuela needs cash. Their only cash really is the sale of oil.
Yeah.
And if they don't have that flow, they don't have the money.
No, you're right. I mean, I think it's one that the market's watching. It's we're down a little bit. Where are we now? 59.63 on Brent. Yeah, it seems Brent seems a little fragile, I have to say. I think that people are trying to pop it back up to that 60 and go on holiday until January the 5th when everyone's back. Um, but yeah, no, it's I think it's the last, well, hopefully one of the last stories we'll sort of hear about any kind of conflict. Where are we on other things then? So Russia, Ukraine seems like progress is being made, but slower than I think most people would hope. Would you say?
Yeah, and again, I don't know if the progress is actually is I don't know if I'd call it progress. Yes, you're having discussions between Ukraine, United States, and the European coalition of the willing, and they're all coming to some type of an agreement. But Russia has yet to really opine on that agreement.
Right. Because it
So
seems
if
it
Russia
seems
says we don't care, that's not what we want, okay, you're back to square one again.
yeah. And I mean that the likelihood of that is quite high, isn't it?
Yes, I would put that at a very high likelihood. I think the idea that the markets are selling off because of peace in our time is a bit premature. I think the sell-off is purely a supply related issue, and people looking at their balances saying, yeah, there's a lot of oil out there.
Because what I've been sort of banging on about recently has been, let's say there is a peace agreement, and then what everyone thinks is peace agreement, then sanctions relief within like a short time frame. That sanctions relief is going to be, contingent upon lots and lots of different things. And you're talking about a 6, 9, maybe 12-month cycle there. So I don't see how the
And
front of the curve is pricing in it and supply coming back.
and it really well, remember the Russian supply is not gone. It's just going into markets that don't care about US sanctions.
Right.
So all you're doing is, all that's happened here recently. Okay, you have the EU sanctions number 19 round where they're going to ban any product into the EU which is produced from Russian crude. And every ICE, Platts, and the other regimes that do physical pricing of oil, they put their rules out about, okay, we won't accept a Russian-made barrel from this date forward or that date forward, and the markets reacted to all that. But that oil is not just like poof, gone. Oh my God, what happens? All that oil done is it's found alternative outlets, and it's caused markets to again readjust trade flows so that allowed oil is moving into the right locations again, and the oil that Europe will not touch now is going to other markets and finding homes. So it's not like the oil's gone.
No, sure. But I mean, any sanctions relief from Russian oil doesn't mean the people who have been buying the Russian oil, like India and China, their numbers are suddenly not going to go from minus $20 delivered for a barrel of Urals to suddenly +2, competing with other barrels that are equivalent, other crude slates are equivalent.
No,
So,
but I think what the hope is that what's the quickest sanction that can be released? Released is anything that was done under the OFAC regulations outside of a congressional mandate in the United States.
so explain that.
Like, for instance, the sanctions on Lukoil and Rosneft.
You think
Those
that they'll come
sanctions,
back?
those sanctions were applied by the executive branch, not by a mandate from the U.S. Congress. And so, with that in case, the U.S. executive branch, the President of the United States, can remove those sanctions as quickly as he can apply those sanctions.
Okay,
Now, there are
but
other sanctions that are on Ukraine that I think stem from the invasion of Crimea, which are congressionally mandated, and therefore it would require an act of Congress to remove.
okay, the Rosneft Lukoil one is interesting because that to me was the sort of biggest needle mover for oil trade for actual oil traders. That was like, okay, this is significant.
Yeah,
But as quick as they were applied, are you saying as quick as they could be
I, I
taken off?
believe, I believe, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe that because of how those sanctions were applied via the executive branch fiat through the OFAC and through the Department of Treasury, they can be removed just as quickly.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Because I suppose, you know, I mean, it's a bit early, I know, but I haven't really heard, and maybe I'm naive, don't answer that. I haven't really seen any other traders yet emerge as the sort of conduits to replace those two entities, Rosneft and Lukoil. In fact, Lukoil have largely don't exist as an entity.
Well, they still exist
Tasco,
inside Russia. They don't exist outside of Russia.
yeah, okay,
Same thing with Rosneft. They still exist inside Russia. They're still producing oil, still running their refineries.
yeah,
I think what's going on is you're probably getting a little obfuscation on the production and exports of oil. They're no longer being exported by Lukoil or Rosneft. They're being exported by other companies based in other areas that are not sanctioned.
okay. I mean, I don't think we'll hear anything this side of Orthodox Christmas, as you said, 6th of January. Um, but I think a lot. It just seems, I don't know, oversupply. Yeah, look, we do have markets that are oversupplied. I think everyone did. I think you would be a little delusional to think that they're not going to be builds next year come Q1. Um, I do like summer Brent spreads. I think that don't quote me on this, don't sue me. I do think they're decent looks now for a buy. You know, minus 10 cents on June, July, when Brent in Europe is always in a seasonal deficit. I think that that's a decent trade. Anyway, enough of me being sued over the Christmas period. 2020, 2025. So a slow grind, yet another slow grind. We've seen crude oil prices come off, like we said earlier, every year for the last four. I think the question is, coming to the end of the year, when do OPEC do something? When does supply, when does that do an about turn? And when does that give a boost back up to them 60, 65, as you said, the market's happy?
I think OPEC's gonna they've been in a wait and see mode now. They stopped adding oil to the market. And I think they need to see, I think they'll become reactive to what goes on January, February. I mean, they've been dropping their OSPs as well, which shows you that there is a sign that they don't see the demand either. They have to incentivize people to buy. And so they've
Yeah.
had this continual dropping of OSP prices, which if that carries on into Q1, we'll probably see something happen in the February, March region, especially as you start going into the big refinery turnaround season for February and March, where refineries go offline for maintenance. They're going to probably be inspired to do something just to ensure that you don't have a super oversupply going into the summer. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
think
think I think yeah, go on.
OPEC's going to want to see a more solid market going into the summer where demand picks up.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a timing thing. I don't think that it's I think even the most skeptical of OPEC watchers would think that they're not going to do something. But if they came out now, or they came out and any time between now and the end of the year, we've still got 2 weeks left. I think that that's another trigger to sell off because if OPEC, it kind of instills a bit of panic, doesn't it? If OPEC come in and say emergency cut because prices aren't where they are. I think the market sells off on that. I don't think it buys it because it implies that actually OPEC are worried about where their oil can go. I think that you're right. They're going to pause. We've already announced they're going to pause returning oil in Q1. I think they'll let January kind of go. We've got IP week early next year, IE week 8, 12 February. I will see you there. We both will, inshallah. And I think that something may be announced then. But I think you're probably right. Coming to the end, coming to the end of Q1, I think the March meeting and rumours around the March meeting is probably the most important because then you're coming into April, May buying season as a refiner. And I think that that's when people will, summer deficits. That's why I think that spreads are a buy.
Well, I think your only flag to that would be Venezuela. If we do get a regime change in Venezuela between now and the end of the year, which I think is solidly on the table, um, I think it would take, Venezuela's oil infrastructure has been degraded greatly since the Maduro regime has come to power because they have not been investing. The refineries are not running very well. The systems aren't running very well. However, I believe companies like Chevron, who have been operating in the Orinoco belts, could probably increase production there rather quickly. And you go from 700, 800,000 barrels a day, maybe up to 1.4 million barrels a day of exports out of Venezuela. Um, and then if there is a peaceful transition of power in that country and you get a more commercial regime back in place who's going to be incentivized to get oil production back to 3 million barrels a day or exports back to 3 million barrels a day, um, then that could really see a big negative push and we could see ourselves in Q1, Q2 touching 50 on flat price.
Yeah,
But
perhaps I'm.
you need to have that peaceful transition, not a civil war.
Yeah, I agree, and amen to that. And look, I think, I mean, there's lots going on. There's lots up in the air, but I mean, it's been a slow grind down. I think if 60 manages to hold through the end of the year, Brent has done well, but it certainly looks like the oversupply narrative is dominating everything. But look,
I'm still holding with my 55 call by
I
the
know
end
you are.
of
I know the
the
radio show reminded me this morning. But yeah, we shall see. But look, I think we'll get one out before the end of the year, shall we? A
year.
final one,
We'll try.
recap. We can do that. I know you're going away on the 27th. I'm around next week. It can be a bit more jovial, not as much, not as many excuses to arrest Matt Stanley for what he's saying about the feds. So sorry in advance. But to anyone going away this weekend, I know there is many of you. Thank you for listening to us and commenting and subscribing, and we will come back stronger. I will be traveling as well next year, so it will be we'll be more organised. I will be more organised. That is my New Year's resolution in
Oh, we're not
advance.
there yet. We're not there yet. Come on. We have
Well,
to get,
nearly.
we have to get through the spotted dick and the Christmas goose still. Come on.
Yes. Yeah, well, there's that. There's that. I mean, we consume other things in this house, but yes. Season's greetings to everyone. We will be back to you next week.
Merry Christmas to everybody, and we will talk to you all next week. Click like, comment, subscribe, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn. Check us out. Smoking Barrel. Until next week.
Ciao.